Welcome back to Mini Brothers. So we have a brake light that came on the car, so we're going to get started working on the brakes. Now, it is the rear brakes that is a problem. The pads are pretty worn and it tripped the sensor. So we're going to replace the rear brakes, but while we're at it, we're going to just change the pads all around. So we got some new brake pads for the car. We're going with EBC yellow pads, and then we'll take it for a drive and see how they work. Here are the new brake pads, and this little piece goes into the caliper. One side gets stuck into the caliper, the other side has an adhesive, and that adhesive side goes onto the back of the brake pad. Now, there are two per brake pad per side, so we're going to stick, they stick onto the back of the brake pad like so, and then the other side goes into the caliper. So we're going to stick this into the caliper first, and then we can slide the brake pad in. These will stick to the back of the brake pad. So while you're changing the brake pads, you want to make sure that the brake fluid in the reservoir doesn't overflow. In our case, we flushed our brake system about a month ago, so we didn't need to replace our brake fluid at all. It's a good idea to suction some of the brake fluid out and make sure you have space in the system when you're putting on new pads. To get the pads out of the caliper, first you have to knock these pins out to release the clip that holds the brake pads in. And then once they come out, this clip that's on the front of the caliper just pops off. Once we have access to the brake pads, you can use your hands to decompress the pistons in the calipers to give you a little more room to be able to move the brake pads around. You have to pry the adhesive backing off the back of the brake pad, and once you do that, you can pull the brake pad out. Once you have the brake pad out of the caliper, then you can use the pick tool again and get the little insert into the piston out from the caliper, because those are going to be replaced with new ones. The right side back on, and now we just got to put the wheel on. Once you're done, you might want to spray with some brake cleaner. Just make sure you don't have any fingerprint oil or anything like that on your brakes. So we're taking off the back brakes now, and this is the culprit of the brake light on the car. So we have a sensor in the back. As you can see, the rear brakes are a little more worn than the front. So we're going to go ahead and take this off and replace it. We are replacing this with the same EBC yellow pads that we put on the front. If you're replacing the sensor, you first have to take out this 11mm bolt from the fender lining to give you access to where the sensor plugs in. Once you take this bolt out, you can easily plug out the sensor and remove the entire sensor from the car. The sensor is held in by a clip. You just simply unclip the sensor, and then you can disconnect it from the upper control arm, and then you have the entire sensor wire that is still connected to the brake pads, but you can easily remove the brake pads now with the sensor wire. Once you have the caliper separated from its housing, you now have to decompress the piston, and to do that you actually need to rotate it counterclockwise. This wasn't the right tool to do this. We ended up having to go and get the correct tool to be able to fit into the piston, to be able to decompress it so that we can fit the new brake pads onto the vehicle. So we have a new sensor we're going to put on the back because the old sensor started to wear through, which is what triggers the light. So we're going to replace that. Anytime you have one of these lights come on from the brake sensors, you should replace, well, you need to replace it because that's the only way that the light's going to go off. So let's get this new sensor and the new pads on the car. So we're putting the brake pads back on. We did put a little grease on the ends. You might want to do that so they don't squeak. Also replaced the sensor which goes on the back one. In the States, this is the passenger side of the car, and so we've replaced this wire with the sensor. It just clips into the back on the inside brake pad, and then we're going to fit the caliper back on. So we're replacing the cable, and it clips in this location here, up here, and then the actual sensor connector is there, just behind this. So there's a bolt that goes here. So it's been about a couple hundred miles since we installed the brake pads. I have done a little bit of aggressive driving since that time. The brake pads are holding up really well. It's definitely a little more firm than the stock brake pads. They feel great. Really, really stop the car well. I decided not to go through the bedding in process that ABC suggests because I don't intend on really taking the car on the track and doing aggressive track days. But if you are going to do aggressive track days, I would suggest you go with their firmer pad, which is the ABC blue pads. And those actually require a bedding in process where you heat up the pad repeatedly and basically bake them and let them cool. And this process hardens the pad and gives it a better bite on the rotor. If you are going to be doing track days, I would suggest you go through that process of bedding in the brake pads properly. So I hope this video was helpful to you if you're going to change your brake pads. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. While you're down there, go ahead and subscribe. That helps us a lot.